You know, you guys, despite their wild exceeding of expectations across the board throughout most of the 2022 NFL season, the New York Giants just seem to be that team that almost nobody other than themselves have actually taken seriously really at all this year. But now, after proving their remarkable start at the beginning of the year was anything but a fluke like the majority of people were starting to say, continuing to hold their own and stay afloat as the season progressed, to then very arguably putting up one of the best all-around team performances we've seen in the 2023 postseason so far. I don't know, it just seems to me at least that the New York Giants could very well be peaking at the perfect time. And honestly, at least from what we've seen, they might just have something up their sleeve that not a lot of teams around the league were actually able to realize throughout the entire regular season, so let's get into it. One sec though guys, if you haven't yet, don't forget to like the video if you do enjoy, subscribe, and turn on those notifications to never miss another NFL video. We're coming out with brand new NFL content every single week around here, especially throughout the rest of the postseason, so trust me, you do not want to miss it. Now, to get back on topic with the New York Giants, while these guys, statistically speaking, had just about the true definition of a middle-of-the-pack offense throughout the season, it's absolutely no secret to me, you, or anyone else watching this video that if there's a catalyst for the improved offensive production we've seen from this team, it is obviously due to their highly effective and utilized ground game. Because while having one of the most proficient running offenses in all of football this year, which also with Saquon Barkley having his most productive season of his entire career on the ground as well, obviously being the biggest reason for this, I'm sure any typical football fan would more than likely just look at this in itself and immediately say to themselves, okay, it's simple. If you shut down Saquon, you'll beat the Giants. There's no questions asked, and there's really nothing more to it than that. But that mindset, as I'm sure most of you've seen with New York's postseason action so far, could not have been further from the truth. And trust me, I'm not just saying this because Saquon only tallied 53 total rushing yards in this wildcard performance, but I'm more so saying it because he somehow only touched the ball 9 times. Now let me just repeat that because of how absurd it actually is. Your surefire top 5 running back in the league who averaged double the touches per game in the regular season and is arguably one of the biggest reasons as to why you had a postseason berth, only touched the ball on the ground 9 times? Well, yes, that is the case, and your eyes do not deceive you. And while I'm sure this did sit as bizarre to most people when watching this game, it certainly also speaks to the difference and brilliance we're seeing in offensive scheming this year with new head coach Brian Daboll and even offensive coordinator Mike Kafka. Because even with using Saquon so little, it's not just like New York would completely abandon the run game that's practically put them in the position that they are right now, but instead, it was clear as day they took a quality over quantity approach with Saquon, resisting to only feed him the ball in necessary and most effective situations, along with even leaning back on their quarterback to exploit some of the biggest weaknesses in the defense's run prevention and show everyone one of the most underappreciated abilities about this team by having none other than the man himself, Danny Dimes, take off the most he ever has in a game in his entire career thus far, while also even leading the team in total rushing yards. And as I'm sure you guys saw yourself, whether they were literal run design plays for Jones on things such as draws and read options, or even just his typical scrambles from the pocket, where his presence has improved profoundly throughout the course of this season. While yes, I know just the concept in itself of saying New York has an elite scramble threat at the quarterback position might sound ridiculous to some of you, but in the end, whether you want to admit it or not, it's one of the biggest advocates as to why this team is where they're at right now. But since we've worked our way into the topic of Daniel Jones, why don't we move this conversation over into Brian Daboll and New York's deceivingly overlooked air attack they've been displaying really for the entire season. And I already know someone was rushing to the comments to say what could possibly be so deceiving about this, considering at least statistically, they were easily one of the least productive offensive teams in this regard. And while many people really love to blame this lack of usage on the quote-unquote limitations of the Giants starting quarterback in Danny Dimes, I think instead that it's much more reasonable to say that it's simply a case of Brian Daboll being nothing short of a genius in terms of aggressively playing to his opponent's disadvantages. Because contrary to popular belief, this team can in fact be a dual threat offense as we've seen so far in the postseason, and also some of those those limitations some of you still enjoy hanging over Daniel Jones' head that we saw throughout the first couple of years of his career, well, for the most part, they've been pretty inexistent for the majority of this season. And yes, while it's clear that Danny's numbers on the year were not eye-popping or high usage by literally any stretch of the imagination, statistically speaking, he still had one of, if not the most efficient seasons out of any starting quarterback across the NFL. And if you were still a member of the Daniel Jones Doubter Club, even after seeing some of the massive strides of improvement he's made this entire year, I just truly don't know how this playoff debut performance from him, which was also very arguably the best game we've seen from him in his 4-year career thus far, doesn't at least get you leaning in the direction of saying that Daniel Jones can be the guy for the Giants when given an ideal situation along with exceptional coaching, which this is really the first time he's ever seen it at the pro level, and it's no coincidence that he's balling out in the process. And I mean, we saw the potential and capabilities of him throughout this entire game. His high-level pocket presence, as mentioned before, with the ability to consistently extend plays and drives, his constant ability to hit tight windows, guys in stride for big conversions, etc., which immense credit also absolutely needs to be given to the depleted wide receiver and tight end rooms of this team as well, with guys like Darius Slayton, Richie James, Isaiah Hodgins, and even Daniel Bellinger performing to levels that not a single person thought would be possible earlier in the year. Everything seen in this playoff run so far just seems to point back to the fact that Danny Dimes isn't just a guy that Brian Daboll can quote-unquote work with, as the headline was throughout the regular season, but instead, with his growing two-threat ability along with what Daboll has been able to do behind the scenes so far, he might just start to be considered a top-level quarterback in the league if he stays on this trajectory. But then, of course, aside from the continuing to evolve and very exciting offense of this team, you also definitely cannot forget about the defense, which, in terms of production this year, is also technically considered to be middle of the pack. The numbers still should not distract us from the fact that, as we've seen at times throughout this year, and even on the big stage in the postseason, they are more than capable of stepping up and forcing a stop when it is absolutely needed. And I mean, with this defense still being extremely young for the most part, and headlined by some potential big names in the future, with guys like Kayvon Thibodeau, even Julian Love, Xavier McKinney, etc., and also with them seeing clear improvement in specific areas this year under new defensive coordinator Wink Martindale, while yes, it's safe to say that this side of the ball will be battle-tested more than anything else throughout the rest of the postseason, the strides they have made have really been the final piece in the complete 180 turn we've seen the New York Giants make throughout the entire year. But of course, will the new look Giants end up having enough in the tank in their arsenal to end up shocking literally the entire league and extend their playoff run even further than this? Well, as always, we'll just have to wait and see. Nonetheless though, you guys, with everything we've mentioned and seen so far from the New York Giants in the postseason, I am of course extremely curious to hear what you have to think about their situation. So please be sure to let me know in the comments what has been the most surprising part to you about everything we've seen in the Giants postseason play already, and also if you had to pick one area of the team, where do you think the Giants need to improve the most in order to extend their playoff run? But again, you guys, if you haven't yet, don't forget to drop a like on the video down below if you enjoyed, and of course, subscribe while you're down there to never miss another one of these NFL videos. But also, I just wanted to say thank you so much to each and every one of you out there for watching. I appreciate you all more than anything. You all know this, and I will see you guys in the next video.